Tonight on the Black Channel, I have a few things I'd like to say in regard to something here. I want to go ahead and play that first.
Oh, there was no black jurors. You know why? Because you can't be unbiased, you dumb shit. If you answer the question, I can't send a black man to jail because he's black, you're not getting on the jury. You're so unintelligent, you can't even fill out a form correctly. You don't even know who your daddy is because 78% of you don't have your father in the home anymore. You got baby mamas running around with 8 kids so they can get EBT cards to feed you all. You think I'm being racist? No, I'm being real. Because they ain't only black people. White people do the same. I'll call them out just as hard as I'll call you out. Anybody who doesn't work, who wants free government handouts, who wants to live in a socialistic society, move to Russia. And normally, I don't normally attack people like this, but I have been cooped up and caged up in this anger. And this is something I'm trying to work on. I need to develop it and funnel it into a more constructive way. But tonight is the one time I'm going to allow myself, it's okay. Tonight, I'm going to allow myself to say what I really want to say. Because most of the time I don't say what I want to say because it's not correct. Just because you think something doesn't mean you believe it. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it wrong. Doesn't make it a fact.
Well, I certainly want you to say everything that you're thinking because I want you to tell the world exactly who you really are and exactly what it was that really influenced your son. So, no, by all means, I want you to continue talking like that. I'm going to come back to that here in just a little bit, though, folks. I'm going to come back to it in a little bit. I'm going to come back to it in a little bit and have a discussion with you all about what the old people used to call growing them for the grave. So I'm going to come back and have a discussion about that here in just a few moments. But before I do, let's go ahead and catch up on a few things here first. First of all, I would like to go into about some events from earlier this week. We're going to get into that real quickly here. So I'm going to be moving kind of fast here at the beginning because I want to try to run through this as much as I quickly can here. First of all, thank you to everyone, and I do mean everybody who helped last week here. We've had a barn burner of a week. We have been rattling the cages. We have been demanding action. We have been doing that. And so we got some responses, particularly in the case of Jeffrey Tyler Kinzer, who shot up those black people's house there in Leesburg, Georgia. And definitely, I'm very thankful to everyone here who contributed and were a part of that. I did get in touch with the attorneys and the family. I did get in touch with them here earlier this week. They did release a statement about that. So, like I say, that part went very well there. As always, I want to thank all of you for your part in it. So let me go ahead and touch on a few things here first, because I also have folks who reached out to some of the district attorneys, and I got your emails. I looked over those. That's wonderful. There's a few things I'd like to touch on here first. Folks, let me be clear about a few things here. When we are doing what we do here, and we are pursuing justice and you're contacting agencies and things, that is not the time to sit up and start showing out. It's not the time to have emotional tantrums or outbursts. I thank you and I'm grateful for your help in reaching out in these things. But you can't contact the district attorney's office saying, and I quote, "What the F were y'all doing letting him off with a misdemeanor? Is y'all stupid MF bastards trying to get him off?" No. I understand some of you may be high strung. I understand that some of you may be emotional. This is not the time for that. So that's not what we do. Okay. I would like to tell you there was only one that did that. That would be incorrect. So I understand you are very upset. I understand you're very frustrated. That's a given. What you can't do, however, is sit up here and become so high strung and wound up, and you're contacting people here and you are not making it clear that you're there on business. Because let me explain to you something here. Did you notice that those folks still responded to you? Did you notice that? That's the part I want you to keep in mind most of all. His office still responded to you. Did you get that? Please understand, the white supremacists are not the least bit worried or concerned or terrified of yet another outburst, because that's the tactics of harmless people. Harmless people. See, so many of you were raised, let me talk to you for a moment here. You were raised to be harmless. Harmless people start yelling invectives and start cursing and screaming because that's you like a baby venting. You're not there to get information that you can use. You're there to vent. White supremacy, that's what they're okay with that. Because you see, in the civil rights generation, they were okay with folks venting because steam is something that you let off and then you're done with it. Being in that ultra heightened state of hostility, that's very, very hard to maintain. It's like flexing a muscle. However, when you have made a decision that this is the direction you're going to go in, well, you see, it doesn't act that way. Power does not sit up here and start acting like the local hood rat. So when you contact these folks on our behalf about these issues, it is mandatory. It's not optional. It is mandatory that you simply contact them exactly the way you were told to. So I don't want to castigate that for too long, but for those of you, I mean, you can't blame this on the old folk anymore. So for a lot of you here, if you're going to get involved in this, it is essential that you make sure that you maintain your composure. You're not scaring anybody. You're not doing anything other than making it look like you are weak and powerless. And that's not who we are. Not at all. Case in point, I don't want anybody else doing this, contacting any of these people on account of anything I say or anything that we say. I don't want anyone doing that under these circumstances because you don't represent us well. It's mandatory that you represent us well. You have to represent us well because you see, understand, some of y'all, that's kind of agent behavior. What? For some of you, when you act like that, please understand, to me, that kind of strikes me as Fed behavior. That kind of strikes me as agent behavior when you do things like that. Because you see, next thing you know, when I make my move, the district attorneys and whatnot will immediately go running to the TV stations and say, take a look. Wow, we were getting threatening letters and threatening emails and hostile. Take a look at that. This is why we had to do this, because they can look at all these hostile emails. So when you start acting out like that, that starts to make me think, I think we found a Fed. I think we found an agent. When you start doing stuff like that. So just please understand, if you don't want people to suspect it, do I smell Fed on you? Do I smell agent on you? When you start acting like an agent provocateur, when you start doing that, when you know that it is uncalled for and counterproductive, what we start thinking is, we just like the old days, we found an agent. We found an agent. So it's essential that we separate and distance ourselves from that, because we know how that gets used against the group and, more importantly, against the movement. So for those of you who are going to participate in these things, it's essential that you don't do that, because if you do, please understand, we're going to have to assume that it's some agent going on. You know full well that that's not called for, and you also know that that's counterproductive. So when that happens, I'm going to be like, okay, I think I smell agent. I think I smell Fed. I think I smell Fed on you. Because we need help, but that's not the kind of help we need. Sounds like you're working for the other team. I also want to say that, in certain cases, we haven't gotten responses about certain things. That's perfectly fine. We're going to keep going on about that. We're going to keep hammering on that. because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So we're going to continue doing that. But I do want to take a moment to discuss something else here. As you all know, it is my long-standing practice that there are only certain circumstances under which I pursue these things. I don't just jump up and sit up here and say, okay, there's some folk over here that something happened to. Let me see what I can do to help. The first thing I want to do is make contact with people. I want to make contact with people. I want to talk to them. I want to see where their heads are at. I want to see what their agenda is. I want to see what they want to do about it. And I want to see if we're all on the same page about what should be done. But brothers and sisters from around the world, and I'm going to say this next part as respectfully as I can, I need you all to understand that even though in the greater scheme of things, I am a rather moderate individual. I'm a rather moderate individual in that case. I want you all to understand exactly how that happens here. I want you to understand where that goes, because in a lot of these cases here, the reason why a lot of things that you would think would happen here doesn't happen is because folks are not on the same page with us. That's been a constant issue here. A lot of them are not on the same page with us. Even though I am a rather mild individual, I'm not some radical out there in the streets yelling about this and that and crack of this and crack of that and all this nonsense. However, in all candor, a lot of attorneys are afraid of us. I've had this experience before. I've had this experience more than once. In a lot of cases, they tell themselves that there are some attorneys out there who kind of tell themselves that, you know, we'll play the mob here and stuff, and we're going to get folks motivated, and then it kind of will make it easier for them to do what they want to do. And that's not always my mission here. That's not always what I'm going after. That is not always what I'm going after here. In a lot of cases, I'm looking at something different. And we can be, believe it or not, we can be very difficult in that regard. A lot of these attorneys, they come back later and check out what we do, and then they're not on the same page that we're on. We experienced this in Alabama. I have never stopped supporting the Alabama boat uprising. I have never stopped supporting that. I will continue to support that. Absolutely. However, unlike most of the rest of you, I spoke to the people involved. I spoke to the principals involved. And it would be less than honest if I told you that, yeah, they didn't flake out on us. So as soon as they talked to me, and as soon as they saw the kind of work we get done, all of a sudden, the attitude changes, the mood changes, the tone changes, the commitment changes. And I can't help but let you all know that it happens immediately after we talk to these attorneys. I've had a number of cases that I've raised over the years, and I got to tell you all, things changed right after we finished talking to the attorneys. We started talking to these folks' attorneys, and then next thing you know, the attitude changes. Can't get your phone calls, don't get returned, emails don't get returned. You start not getting a response. So I would be less than candid if I didn't tell you all that, by the way, it's been a chronic issue. When you see these kind of incidents occurring, and I get in touch with folk, because that's what we do, and I have to let you all know that after we have conversations with these attorneys, in a lot of these cases, next thing you know, we don't hear anything else. So for some of the more recent things here, I got to say some of this stuff has been kind of funny style. It really has. Some of this stuff has been kind of funny. And I don't mean ha-ha. Some of the stuff that I've witnessed, some of the stuff that I've seen, some of the stuff that I was watching there, that kind of thing there jumps out at me. That kind of thing jumps out at me. And I've seen some of that this week, which is why you haven't seen any updates. That's why you haven't seen any updates. So I've been in touch with people, but either between the attorneys or between their families and whatnot, things have gotten funny style here. It really has. Things have gotten funny style. I'm not going to chase people around. I'm not going to do any of that. That's not going to occur. But what it is going to be is I'm going to let you all know when I do certain things. It isn't that I didn't follow up on it. Understand that. I followed up on it, but that tends to be an issue there. What I'm not going to do is do too much. Remember, I am never going to sit here and be more involved in these things than somebody else. I'm not going to be more involved and more committed to it than anybody else. That's kind of important. So I just want to let you all know that it is not because of a lack of trying and is not because of a lack of effort. Between the families, not necessarily who I spoke to last week, but I will say that between the families and between the attorneys, I'm starting to we're having a bit of an issue. So I'm not really certain what's going on. I'm not really certain what's caused it. However, it seems to look a little familiar. It seems to look a little familiar. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about here. It seems to look a little familiar. So when first you have an easy time getting a hold of folk, next thing you know, somebody mentions about their attorney, and then after that, next thing you know, it starts looking real bad and real familiar after that. Starts looking real bad and real familiar. So I wanted to let you all know, following up on what we discussed last week, I can't limit it to just the attorneys because there were certain folk in the family we were talking about. Yeah, it's not just one person. It's not just one person. So sometimes you kind of think these white supremacists, they're choosing folk for a reason. Sometimes it looks like they're choosing them for a reason. Maybe sometimes it's their representation. I don't know. I'm not saying necessarily. I'm just saying, by the way, I know sometimes some of these attorneys want to get their Ben Crump on, and I get it. I'm not beating up on Benjamin Crump tonight. What I am saying is that, yeah, it's like, okay, in certain cases here, I see behaviors and stuff, and it's like, okay, what's going on here? What's the real goal? What's the real deal? And next thing you know, they start looking into the black channel and they start looking into the new black media and they look into what we do. And then they realize, oh, we ain't bag chasers. We're white supremacist stoppers, not bag chasers. And I think for a lot of these attorneys, that's kind of an issue for them. I think for a lot of them and some of the families and stuff, it's like somebody lets them know that there might be a way they can spend this and get a bag. And then it's like, okay, well, let's just fall back there for a little bit. So we've seen this before. Remember the Clarks out there in California, Sacramento, Tavante and them. I mean, you've seen this stuff before. They're attorneys. They want to whip people up to try to get folk to sit up here and, say something and, oh, let's raise the profile and, get more attention on it. And then next thing you know, they go behind the scenes and then, Next thing you know, it's like, okay, now they don't want to, all of a sudden, everything's all right. Y'all can all go home now. Really? So I don't just jump out the window and say, okay, we need the X, Y, Z and this, that, and the other. I choose things strategically. And I move forward from there. So I did want to let you all know that, yes, I did make contact with them. Yes, I did talk to them. Yes, I did do those things. But yeah, after that, we didn't hear very much of anything. So that's been since Tuesday. Haven't heard anything else since then. Contacted people. We've contacted them, but haven't heard anything else or gotten any other response since then. So make of that what you will. Make of that what you will. Okay. In the chat room, we got some silly stuff going on here. I don't know. The ADHD kids, maybe they just dumped it. I am not talking about the Carmelo Anthony family at all. I'm talking about what we talked about last week. So I literally said Leesburg, Georgia, and Lebanon, Tennessee. I'm talking about last week. I'm not talking about the Anthony family at all. I have not spoken to them because I've not reached out to them. It is not because I cannot do so. I can. I could call them right now. I'm not going to do that. When I think it's time to do that, when I think it's appropriate to do that, I'm going to do so. I'm not going to do so because you say I can get in touch with them whenever I want to. And they can call me whenever they want to. They can call me right now during this program and I will answer the phone. I'll put you all on hold and I'll answer the phone. So no, these are people you talk about. These are people that I talk to. So this is all the slow bus kids who came in late and you're trying to sit up and pretend you're paying attention. I missed it. Okay, put the pipe down. It helps. Put the pipe down, put the lean down, put the Xbox controller down, and get it, rent an attention span if you can't get one. But no, nobody said that. So in any case, all the lead pipe babies show up later. Who are you talking about? What you mean? So in any case, no, like I say, going forward here, and I want to thank everybody about that, and we will continue to work on these things. The situation in Lebanon, Tennessee, I still want to follow up on that. The situation in Lebanon, Tennessee, I still want to follow up on that, and I'm still going to follow up on that. I'm still going to do that. I'm just letting you all know because I think I owe that to you all. Because of the work and the effort that you put in. There were thousands of you in here earlier this week. Thousands of you. That's what the hell I'm talking about. That's what changes things. That's what lets people know that this is a real issue. However, sometimes there's certain elements that see that kind of thing going on, and then they kind of tell themselves, well, maybe this will help us make some leverage, but we don't want to be associated too much because we got something else we're trying to do. And I'm just saying, yeah, I'm not a part of that something else we're trying to do thing. I'm not a part of that. I don't care if the municipalities don't pay out a dime. I want felonies and life sentences for the Chud the Builders and all the copycats. I want that. Life sentences for white supremacists, priceless. For everything else, there's MasterCard. And that's where I come at it from. However, I just want you all to know that over the years, it's also been clear that that position that we have, and let me be clear, I'm just the messenger. All of you are the message that I came to bring. You all have set the tone that you're not concerned about payouts. You're concerned about punishment and prisons and penalization. That's what you're concerned about. So when I talk to these folk, that's where I'm going at with it. The issue is that when we start dealing with certain factions and certain fragments, they got a different agenda from us. So they see where what we're doing could be useful, but they don't really want it to go where we want it to go. And I'm not saying any names here. I'm just saying, yeah, there's an element of that to it. So when the TV cameras show up, what? When the TV cameras show up, things go one way. When the new black media show up, boots on the ground, and knowing that this is where we gonna take it, then things go another way. And so I'm just letting you all know that, yes, I did speak to them, and between certain members of the family in Leesburg, let me just say that, certain members of the family in Leesburg, between them and some of the attorneys and stuff here, things seem to be taking a very strange turn. And it looks kind of familiar. So I'm not really sure where that's coming from. I'm being very diplomatic tonight. I'm not really sure where that's coming from. I'm not certain why this is occurring. I'm just letting all of you know that that's occurring. So until further notice, if you don't hear anything from me about that, that's the reason why you're not hearing anything. Not because of something I heard or saw secondhand from somebody else. And once again, you all know me. This is why I've had the practice that when Jason's not saying anything, Jason's saying something. When Jason's not telling you something, Jason's trying to tell you something. I don't like doing this in the open like that. However, under these circumstances, I want you all to understand that the reason you're not hearing anything from me is because I've spoken to them. And that's when I start waiting to see, okay, what's the follow-up? And then when folk get kind of weird style and kind of strange, things start getting real strange and real quiet. It's like, okay, I've seen this before. Now, I just want to be very, very clear with all of you of exactly what we have to look forward to here, okay? I want you to understand exactly what we have to look forward here to. This situation in Leesburg, Georgia, let me be clear about this. In case nobody noticed, the white supremacists in office, the white supremacists at the DA's office, the white supremacists in the court system, which it is completely overrun and infested with white supremacists, please understand that this is their goal. Whether it's that Chow fella or whether it is Austin Metcalf or you name it, their goal is to allow the white supremacists to harm you at will, to harm you with impunity. If you defend yourself, you will get prosecuted, and the white supremacists are allowed to run wild, murder you and your children, and gun them down in the streets. In the case of Jeffrey Kinzer, I seized onto this because I saw from what they were charging him with, and there have been some jackasses trying to tell me about what attempted murder charges are or are not. Please have all these damn seats.
Sit your ass down.
You don't know what you're talking about. Nobody knows how stupid you are until you start talking. So let me be clear. Nobody knows how dumb you are until you start speaking. And there's a lot of folk who pretend that they know how these things work, and you don't. And the letters that you saw me post from the attorneys showed you right there. Yes, please sit down and shut up for the rest of your life. You don't know what you're talking about. You're clout chasing gone dumb, not even clout chasing gone wild. So the reason why I say that is because I want you all to understand that when I see the prosecutors moving like this, please understand what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing from them is that they're trying to steer him to a misdemeanor charge. They're going to try to steer him towards basically discharging a firearm. Let me explain to you all. They're charging him with the lowest thing they can right now, aggravated assault. And then they're going to start talking to him and his attorneys to plea bargain that down to something else. Because remember, they do not want to convict white men of felonies. You need to understand how the systems and the prosecutors work. They do not want to sit up here and convict a white man of a felony. See, that's reserved for the black folk. That's reserved for the black folk. That right there. You're supposed to get convicted of the felonies even if it's a misdemeanor, but for white men, we're going to give them a misdemeanor even if it's supposed to be a felony. That's the whole point. So I want you to be clear of why I seized onto that. I want you to be clear about that. That's where they're going with it. I'm telling you right now, where they're going with this is steering this towards a misdemeanor. They do not want to convict him of a felony. That's what I'm trying to tell you. No, they're not talking about hate crime. They're not talking about a proper felony. They're going to try to plea bargain this down. They're hoping it goes below the radar and that nobody's paying attention so that they can plea bargain this down with him to a misdemeanor. And then you just wake up one morning and just like he was released on bond without them saying anything, they're going to sit up here and plea bargain it down to a misdemeanor and then close the case and then tell you and then not say anything. So please understand that that's where they're going to try to go with this. And that's the exact same thing that you see them gearing up to do in Lebanon, Tennessee. They're gearing up to sit up here and try to give this guy a misdemeanor. That was why they released them on bond immediately. That's to let you know they're gearing up for the misdemeanor. And what the misdemeanor will be is discharging a firearm. What about the fact you were shooting at people? Discharging a firearm. Well, I mean, he didn't hit anybody. That's not the standard. In Florida, they just gave a young black fella life in prison for shooting at police officers. Didn't hit anybody. They said, here, hold this life sentence. So these guys are supposed to be looking at capital felonies. And yet I can see the prosecutors clearly steering them towards plea bargaining to a misdemeanor. And I'm telling you, it'll just be discharging a firearm or something like that. It'll be just that. That's why I jumped on these when I did, because I see what this is. These are cases where the white supremacists were trying to ambush people. It's on video. So we have everything that we need. We have everything that we need, apparently, except families and attorneys who are as interested in pursuing the issue as we are. So that's tending to be a problem. That's tending to be a problem, and that's tending to be an issue. I see it and I hear it, and I want you all to understand that by allowing these cases to get soft-pedaled and allowing these cases to get soft-handed like this, letting them know that they can sit up here and shoot at you, and then here come these other folk either playing dumb or ghosting or whatever. This puts everybody in danger. The reason why they are sitting up here bouncing off the walls is because they are not able, they understand that if Chud the Builder gets this felony, if Chud the Builder is convicted of attempted murder, that's how you stop white supremacy. You stop white supremacy right there. You stop white supremacy by punishing people. You stop white supremacy by showing them that as soon as you attempt to practice white supremacy, you are going to get punished. That's how you stop it. Right there. Which is why it is so critical to them that it never be punished. Because what it does is it shuts the whole system down. Remember, white supremacy is a three-legged stool, not a four-legged one. It's a three-legged stool. If you remove any one of the legs, it falls over. So the system requires all of its parts to work. There are no expendable parts in the system. So white supremacy depends on the whole system to uphold itself, to uphold the wrongdoing, to uphold the mistreatment. If any part of that system doesn't come to their rescue, then the whole thing breaks down. That's the problem. So Chud the Builder needs to have a George Zimmerman moment. He needs everything to come together and everybody to hold firm. And we need all of us to be in on the white supremacy. He can't afford for anything to break down, because if it breaks down for him in front of the whole world, then it sends the message to all the rest of them. If Chud could not depend on the system to protect him, then none of you can depend on the system to protect you. If Chud could not count on the system to protect him, then the next one who thinks about doing it, the first thing that they'll remember is, wait a minute, the system didn't protect him. We thought they were going to hold firm with us. We thought they were going to join hands, lock arms, and hold firm with us. And they didn't do it. Now, if I jump out the damn window, what are the chances that I'm just going to be by myself? And that's why they're terrified of what's happening with him. I would like to make it a trifecta, if you will. What? I would love to make it a trifecta. If you can get Chud and grab some of these other would-be copycats and sit up here and start a roll again, next thing you know, oh man, everywhere you go, folks are going to be saying, wait a minute now, oh hell, can't really do that. When you show them that even under Donald Trump, all we got to do is knock out one piece of the puzzle, knock out one leg of the system, and the whole thing collapses. When you start showing that, and remember, every victory fuels the next victory, and every defeat fuels the next defeat. So once you start showing them Chud goes down, Robert Moore goes down, Jeffrey Kinzer goes down, down for the count. When you start showing the dominoes start falling left and right, that sends the clear message to everyone: the system is broken. You can risk your life trying to practice white supremacy, but there will be no system to back you up. If you do it, you're simply gambling, A, that you will survive the encounter, Austin Metcalf, and B, that there will be a system that will support you afterward. Now, that first one is a big gamble to begin with, as we've noticed on video. Half the time, that's not working out for them very well at all. And so even after that, even if you can survive the encounter, if there is no system, that's a lot of damn gambling. Your chances of surviving the encounter are 50-50 at best. Your chances of the system supporting you are 50-50 at best. At that point right now, you just kind of go home with your Confederate flag drawers on and stand in the middle of the floor in the trailer park and just kind of spaz out on meth or whatever you're smoking. You kind of just go home and do that is what you end up doing, because this other thing is just too damn risky to do. It's just too damn risky to do. So understand, when you start increasing the risk factor exponentially and you start showing, not talking, but showing them that you can't count on the system. You might have been able to get the police to go along with it, but the prosecutors or the judge or something, then we can make that break down somewhere along the line. That is what sends the shock wave that makes everybody else fall the hell back. That's what sends the shock wave that does it. I need to remind you all. Please remember, after Trayvon Martin was killed, the white supremacists thought they had a free-for-all then. Then they came and killed another young black male, and next thing you know, that guy goes straight to prison for it. Next thing you know, you didn't hear of a whole lot of that happening. They were telling everybody it was going to be a crime spree and the white supremacists would be out there lynching at will, and that's not what occurred. In Texas, please understand, they are trying to make up for all the L's that they took, most notoriously Amber Geiger. Amber Geiger, with her kinfolk going around throwing up the OK sign and whatnot, and they scrubbed their social media. Amber Geiger was supposed to usher in the era of just opening front doors and murdering black people in their chairs. That's what she was supposed to do, was usher in the era of random killing. That you could just be a black person anywhere, and all they have to do is be white, gun you down. No, at that point, no weapon required in your property, no crime, no weapon. We can just kill you where you stand or where you sit or where you lay. Now, that was what they were trying to do with her, was usher in the era of random murder. And because, I will say we, because I am just the messenger. And I said, oh no, I used to live in Dallas. No. Let me go ahead and grab a few billboards and put this front page. And in my estimation, that was the turning point. When they realized this will not be a little thing and the eyes are watching, and that was the turning point. And that's when I told you all, this judge in the case of Austin Metcalf, he went a different direction. All the things that worked to our advantage in Amber Geiger's trial, you saw this suspected white supremacist judge and suspected white supremacist prosecutor do exactly the opposite. They learned from Amber Geiger's conviction, and they went to work, both the prosecutor and the judge colluding together, went to work to try to go ahead and rig a trial, which they did. But I don't want you to forget why they did that. They did that because that was a huge loss. That was a huge loss. Don't you be fooled. So they've been trying to make up for that. They've been trying to make up for it. They're still smarting about George Floyd, people. I mean, they are still hurt over that. They are still fuming over it. Our job is to make sure that we stay on the beat for it, but we will be deliberate in how we do so. We're going to be deliberate in how we do so. So, like I say, definitely, I'm still on the case about these things. I will continue to be so. We will continue to watch things. We will continue to look to see if we can identify places where we can be of service. We're going to identify places where we can give our proper attention. We're going to continue doing that. That's important as well, because this is what we're about. But this is far from a couple of things happening. I mean, there's a bunch of cases out there happening. I want you all to understand that my reason for some of these other ones I got a hold of was because you had it on video. That was the key critical thing for me, was that you have it on video. When you start making these into issues, now you got the white supremacists having to argue why that's okay. Once you have it on video, see, it makes it very difficult, because what they want to do is they want to tell you that it's not happening. They want to tell you that it's not happening. So when you get it on video, you're showing them, oh, white supremacy is alive and well and very active. So you see, they despise that. They hate you showing incontrovertible proof that white supremacy is still out here doing what it do, because they're trying to tell you it isn't there. Nothing's happening. Nobody's hunting you all down. There is no white supremacy. Nobody's doing anything to you. That's what they want to tell you. So when you get these things on video, oh, you can't lie about that. See, there's where Chud messed up. Chud the chump sat up here and messed up because he was running around recording himself on video. Now, his goal was to try to normalize white supremacy. The only problem is that only works if you can keep getting away with it. You become like a bank robber who keeps going to one bank to another bank to another bank. It's like, dude, eventually you're going to get caught. I mean, everybody knows your face. Everybody knows your name. Everybody knows your MO. You're doing too much. So in Chud's case, the smart thing for him would have been to sit back and chill. But you see, since he was wearing that skirt, the mental and emotional psychoses wouldn't allow him to. So, yeah. And by the way, Megan Ku Klux Kelly, who has such a bee in her bonnet about trans people, interesting that she's not attacking Chud the Builder. What? Interesting there. That's kind of an oversight. So she got a bee in her bonnet about violent trans people. Megan Kelly allegedly is so upset over violent trans people, and yet Chud, she's really soft-handed with him. Found that to be interesting. Found that to be very interesting. And she's kind of soft-handed about that. So we will be watching, we will be monitoring. We are on the case, we are on the job. And that brings me back to Austin Metcalf's dad. Now, there were some folks who questioned me about that situation. They were like, well, Jason, his father showed up, and when the white supremacist showed up at the trial, he told them to get gone, and that was just for public appearance purposes. Don't be fooled about that. I told you all the whole time, the apple don't fall too far from the tree. Please understand that. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And I'm very glad that Jeff Metcalf has decided to do this. I'm very glad that he took the mask off, people. I've been telling you this for going on 2 decades now. I'm never upset when the white supremacists go ahead and drop the mask and drop the routine and drop the pretense. Listen to me, I need my white supremacists to be straight up the middle. You see, white supremacy was powerful when it has plausible deniability. When they speak in code words. Remember, when they made their laws, they mentioned after the Declaration of Independence and Constitution, once they had the foundation of white supremacy, after that, they didn't say white anymore. When they made their laws, they only talked about the Negro. But you notice, after that, they don't mention white anymore. It's forbidden. It's verboten. You're not to mention white anymore. You're not to mention white anymore. Not after that. They can talk about you, but you are no longer to mention white. White doesn't exist. There's just America. But there is no whiteness. There is no white. There is no white people. So did you see how they did that all through the civil rights era and everything? They're talking about you. They're naming you. They're mentioning you. But they're not talking about white. That's the only race they don't discuss. While they're practicing blatant white supremacy, and that's the only one you don't talk about. So you see, I need them to drop the pretenses. I need them to drop the code words. I need them to get super buck bold and come on up with it straight up the middle. Drop the code speak, drop the side language, drop the cliches, drop the metaphors, and just come on out with it and say it right up the middle. Don't just say some off-color comment. I need you to say all of the usual white supremacist stereotypical platitudes. I need this, Jeff Metcalf.
Oh, there was no black jurors. You know why? Because you can't be unbiased, you dumb shit. If you answer the question, I can't send a black man to jail because he's black, you're not getting on the jury. You're so unintelligent, you can't even fill out a form correctly. You don't even know who your daddy is because 78% of you don't have your father in the home anymore. You got baby mamas running around with 8 kids so they can get EBT cards to feed you all. You think I'm being racist? No, I'm being real. Because they ain't only black people. White people do the same. I'll call them out just as hard as I'll call you out.
And yet, I'm waiting for the video from Jeff Metcalf calling out white people. This is what I wanted. I want this right here, Jeff. I want this. I want you to stop the pretenses and say what you really mean. The way you really mean it. I want you to bring out all the racist tropes, all the racist cliches, all the racist code words, all the racist slogans. I want you to roll them on out. That's what I want. I want there to be no ambiguity what kind of demon you are. I want you to show everybody that everything that we said, there it is. That we were not labeling you incorrectly. We were not mislabeling you. We were not slandering you. No, everything that we said about you from the beginning, everything that we suspected, yeah, come on out and show us that we were right. See, I need you all to understand that we're prosecuting a case. I need you all to understand that we are prosecuting a case. But you see, it is not Jeff Metcalf who is on trial. It is white supremacy that is on trial. He is just one of the latest messengers. However, we can't prosecute white supremacy if you can't prove it's actually there. When he does stuff like this, there you go. Another brick of evidence. There it is. There it is. So you see, we don't have to prove anything anymore. He's already proven it. He's going to have to prove that this isn't unadulterated, undiluted white supremacy. He's going to have to prove that that's not what we just heard. Which, of course, you can't do. So, yes, I absolutely want this. I want this. I want this right here. I want him to keep it up. I want him to keep going. No chill. No whatsoever. No backing off the gas. As a matter of fact, give him Mo. Give him another microphone. Simulcast him on all the television stations. Put this on rerun. Put this on a loop. I want everybody to hear this. And then I want all of his supporters to get emboldened and to come out and defend it. I want them all to do it, folks. I want all the roaches to come out of their corners, to come out of the walls. I want all the roaches to come on out. Stop hiding. Come on out into the light so that we can show the world that the cockroaches do exist. This isn't a game. It's like Game of Thrones. Remember, nobody believed that the White Walkers actually existed until they finally captured one and brought them all the way down to King's Landing. Everybody treated it like it was just a myth or a fairy tale or a superstition until the day they saw the undead running up to grab your throat. And I'm just saying, yes, that right there, so that there's no more dispute or debate. When you show people the White Walkers, when you can prove to them that the White Walkers are real, you can't argue against this because you're not arguing with me anymore. You got to argue with this. You have to argue that this isn't white supremacy. Well, that becomes a very daunting task because you see, back in the old days of broadcast TV and broadcast radio, there was no counter programming. They told you what was real. They told you what wasn't. They hid videos and whatnot. But you see, here's the real issue. The real issue is that now in the modern era, there's nobody there to play image consultant or PR rep for the white supremacists to yank the damn microphones out of their hands or to go bury this interview so that the general public doesn't see it. You see, if this were a corporate outlet and if Jeff had PR people, they would have immediately cut the cameras, turned off the microphones, grabbed the tapes out of the recorders, grabbed the tapes out of the cameras, busted up the audio equipment. They would have made sure that this never got out because they would understand, dude, you can be as racist as you want to be. You can't document it. You can be as bigoted as you want to be. You can't document it. People have been accusing you of this, and they have been making the logical step and connection that your son was racist and that the home he was in most likely already has those signs. You come out and talk like this, and you're proving them all but correct. They're not guessing anymore. Now you're proving it. So you see, if he had proper PR people, they would have grabbed all the equipment and busted up all the evidence. They wouldn't have allowed that to stay. They wouldn't have allowed it to stay. By allowing it to stay here, it's documented. And please understand, the white supremacists' hearts sank when they saw this. Their hearts sank when they saw it because they were like, damn it. Because he is now recharacterizing those events in racial terms. It gives you that dimension. Oh, so people suspected that your son was practicing white supremacy, and now we see the tree that he was the fruit of. Oh, okay. Thank you for confirming what we said the whole time. Now they're going to be very desperate to try to hold on to it, although there's nothing more they can use. He'd have been a whole lot better just being quiet, but they couldn't do that. Well, now you just went ahead and handed it to us. And this is what we need. I said that, but now I will say one more thing. You see, Jeff Metcalf and all of the other suspected white supremacists and confirmed white supremacists. You see, when I was a boy, like so many of you in here, when I was a boy, I was raised by the old folks. And I was raised by the old folks in the neighborhood, in the church, on the block. And the old people used to say something. They used to say something about young folk who, once they started hitting teenage years, they would go in one or two directions in the city of Shreveport. They'd either go straight-laced or they'd either go straight wild. That's the way it goes. Your kids are going to college or the pen. That's what it's going to be. And you start looking for the signs early. Your daughters are loose. Your daughters run them streets. Your sons are hanging out late. They hanging out with them fellas down there on Sprague Street. You start looking for those telltale signs that show that, this is the direction they going in. And they used to have a phrase that they used to use. The phrase was growing them for the grave. That was the phrase that they used to use when parents were not properly overseeing their children, not properly supervising their children, teaching them wayward things, cultivating wayward things, destructive things. When you saw those signs early, they would say, you're growing them for the grave. That's what they would tell them. And Jeff Metcalf may not have thought that's what he was doing, because he too most likely made the assumption that there was a system that would have their back. He had no idea that there could be a wild card. He had no idea that there could be a wild card in there that could circumvent white supremacy, the system, and everything else. He told himself, don't worry, we got this. And he told his sons, from what we see here from his belligerent attitude, we can clearly see how he raised his son. He raised his son to believe you can do whatever you want to. He raised his son to think that if you see a black person, you can do whatever you choose to do. And he didn't think for a moment about the words of the old folk from where I was raised. He didn't think about that for a moment. And the folks who were cheering him on and whatnot and using his now deceased son as an internet meme. The place that Carmelo Anthony's family will go to see him will be radically different from the place that you'll go to see your son. And the folks who sat up here and cheered it on and egged it on, is that going to be your comfort? I need you all to understand that when you got folks who are this serious about it, that they are literally willing to sacrifice their offspring. You are in a race war. As far as they're concerned, you're in a race war. What he didn't understand was that by following this sick religious ideology of white supremacy, that you will sacrifice your children to the altar. You will sacrifice your children on the altar of this demonic religion. The white supremacists, the Ben Shapiros, the Megyn Kellys, they kids are sitting safe at home. They would never have done what yours did, Jeff. They never would have allowed their children to do that. They would have taught their children, don't do it. But they will gladly sit up here and cheer you on while you send your children off. You see, they would have protected theirs, and they have protected theirs. They never would have advised their children to do something like that, but they would gladly encourage you to send yours. And so now they use your children as mascots. They send you to go to treat your children as mascots. And that is cold comfort, when now the only way you can experience anything with them is a tombstone. That is cold comfort. And was there a conversation that was had beforehand? Was it worth it? Listening to the white supremacist enablers, was it worth it? I don't think it was. I don't think it was. So Jeff Metcalf is going to have a very long time to consider about these events. Jeff Metcalf is going to have a very long time to consider how he raised his son. He's going to have a very long time to consider the evenings that he talked to his son. He's going to have a long time to consider some of the rumors that we heard about what was happening at that house. What? Jeff Metcalf is going to have a very long time now to consider the ramifications of the lessons that he taught, the things that he said, how he guided them, the instructions given, the reinforcement that was offered. He's going to have a long time to do that now. Please understand, the white supremacists are trying to drag things out. It's really stupid to do so, because dragging this out is only going to make it worse for you. You see, I told you all from the beginning there was a reason why. When white supremacy can defend itself, it drops the evidence, and drops the evidence quickly. When white supremacy cannot defend itself, it starts hiding, concealing, lying. It must do so. It must do so because in order to enact injustice, you have to lie about everything. And so as time goes on here, if they would like to drag matters out, they can. But please understand, you've heard everything about Carmelo Anthony that there is to hear. You know what you have not heard? You haven't heard anything about the Metcalfs. Particularly, we haven't heard anything about what was happening at that house. And there have been all kinds of rumors about that. So when Jeff sits up here and acts like this and whatnot, and by the way, the grieving father really, when he starts acting like this, it's really like, okay, dude, are you sure there's not something you're trying to deflect attention from? Oh, no, folks. No. I'm not referring to any criminal record from Jeff Metcalf, although if you'd like to go down that rabbit hole, you can. I'm not referring to that, which, by the way, the white supremacist media is treated far differently than, for example, the Harambe issue. But I'm not even talking about alleged criminal history of Jeff Metcalf, folks. I'm not talking about that. I meant what I said. The house. I meant what I said. See, there's a reason why they did not want to release records. There's a reason why they don't want you to release those kind of things. There have been rumors about what was going on there. That if you actually focused on that, just like his racist outbursts here, that, by the way, there's rumors that there was more going on and that the locals were aware of it. There are rumors that there was more going on and that the locals were aware of it. Yeah, about when he showed up with his arm in a sling, there are specific rumors about that, about why was Jeff Metcalf's arm in a sling? Maybe if you got a son who's 6'2" and 225 pounds. So folks have had questions about, by the way, Jeff, we heard rumors about your arm being in a sling. What was that about? Because Megan Ku Klux Kelly and the other folk don't seem to be very interested in investigating that. And it's like, if they actually did, what would they find? If they asked questions about what the relationship was going on in the house, what exactly would we find? So if you all want to know why it is that they've been working hard and heavy to try to deflect attention, please understand, I'm letting you all know that, if anything was mishandled in this case, that probably was it. I'm not talking about from a trial perspective. I'm talking about from a public relations perspective. But I think that if you keep digging, you start finding things. I think if you keep digging, you start finding things. And there have been a lot of folk in the media who have been desperate to make sure that question doesn't get asked. Well, since they are interested in prolonging the issue, why don't we go ahead and address those questions then? And let's find out what the real influence was. Since there are folks out there who seem to be interested in other things, okay, let's see that. In the chat room, RRG, I want RRG to give me a call up here on Zoom. Very glad you said that, RRG. Very glad that you said that. Let me go ahead and fire up the Zoom right quick here. RRG would definitely like to go into that, so I'm so glad you said that. Since you said that, you've made a couple of statements now defending that. Great. We are definitely the place you want to be at to go ahead and make that point. So, there goes the link to the Zoom. RRG is going to have 2 minutes to go ahead and join us here on Zoom. Very glad that you've made those statements there. We always need to have somebody who gives the other side of the issue. We always want to have that. So very glad you said that there. Very glad. Let's go ahead and pin that link to the Zoom there. Sit back, smile, and dial. And RGG's got 2 minutes to be on, which is why we're so glad to have these defenders, because, of course, if they're not all liars, why, of course, they'll stand by that, right? I mean, it's amazing when you give them the opportunity. It's like, okay, always turns out to be a problem. Always turns out to be an issue. Okay. Now he's saying he was being sarcastic. Okay. All righty then. All right. Yeah, y'all know it always goes the same way. It always goes the same way. It's never any different. It goes the same way. Every single time it does that. I would like to tell all of you out there that if you love your sons and if you love your daughters, be careful how you raise them. Be careful how you raise them, because you never know when you are going to be raising them for the grave. Although you do know when you're raising them for the grave, when you start telling them about the ability to sit up here and mistreat people, and then you see that you are ultra aggressive and at the mouth and whatnot, and that's a problem. So when you start seeing those warning signs, I want you all to know exactly what you're looking at there. I want you to know exactly what it is. Watch out for that. You might tell yourself your kids are invincible. Oh, look at them. They're bigger than the others. They're stronger than the others. They can push their weight around. This is what we're supposed to be. Neanderthal rules. And next thing you find out, life throws you a curveball that you didn't see coming. Next thing you know, your children go from being your heirs to being an abject lesson for everybody else around them. Because I would like to say this next part here directly. I'd like to say this next part directly. Do you think that anybody else learned the lesson of Austin Metcalf? Not being disrespectful, I'm asking a question. Do you all think that anybody else out there saw what happened to Austin Metcalf? Do you think that they took away a lesson from that? Do you think there's some of the other folk out there whose parents might have been putting similar bugs in their ears? Do you think that they saw what occurred and might have taken a lesson from it? I don't know, folks. I might disagree with a bunch of y'all. Everybody in here saying no, but I might differ with you on that. I might differ with you. So we may have a difference of opinion on this. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I didn't say everybody. I didn't say this is going to change, the complete social dynamic. I didn't say that. But some folks sit there and think, oh, it's going to go easy. And then for a few of them there, it's like, might be a couple of them there and be like, well, it might not go that simple. Hey, you, Brad, what do you think? So, I don't know, Troy. He looks kind of small over there, but I wonder if Austin thought the same thing. Maybe we should just go get an adult instead. I know what your dad told you. I know what your dad said, but maybe we shouldn't try to put our hands on him. Very tempting, but maybe we shouldn't try to put our hands on him. How could this go bad? I don't know, Troy. Let's just call a coach or somebody. I know what Dad said, but okay. I got a feeling that there's at least one or two people who have a different thought about it now. As sad as it may be for that, this was completely avoidable. But now the further that we look, we're starting to see the signs of exactly how they ended up here. Seeing exactly how they ended up here. We're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. Before we do, I want to thank everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, Super Chat, Venmo. Shout out to Nancy King. She says, thank you for your accurate assessment, TBA, in this matter. Keep exposing these demons in the system of injustice. To my man, Mr. Richburg. Thank you very much for your support tonight here, brother. We appreciate that. To Mark B. Big Little Brother says, thank you for your masterful 700 reviews of analysis in every broadcast. We do our best. I want to thank Fu Quan, April Thompson, Michael J, Logic Before Emotion, Beverly White, Church of Black Power, Miles, and everybody else here. Thank you very much for your support tonight. We appreciate that here as well. We're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to touch on a couple of other things here. Might take a few phone calls from you all here and more. This is the Black Channel.
Be the teacher, knowledge on the block. Got the kids learning, minds open like a lock. Books and skills from the east to the west. Bringing education, yeah, we're simply the best. Classes on fire, brains burning with desire. Innovation driving like a tire through the mire. Math, science, history, we got the whole range. Kids hitting new heights, teachers making a change. Used to be the teacher, stacking up the grades. Future bright shining, no need for no shades. Got the youth thriving, moving up the ladder. Smart and sharp, brains growing fatter. Lessons so lit, yeah, they stay in a blaze. Every mind sharp like a sword in the haze. Mr. B in the house breaking knowledge chains. Education kingpin, we ripping the games. Used to be the teacher.
Order yours today to experience all the benefits of Ash Kickin' Body Butter. With skin so smooth and soft, you'll thank us for it. Shop Ash Kickin' online. That's ASHKICKIN.com.
Hi, this is Brenda Starr, creator of Poetry with a Purpose and author of the book Pressed But Not Crushed. Pressed But Not Crushed is an anthology of political poems that address current and historical issues in American descendants of slave population and African American population. The book describes slaveries and its residuals, Jim Crow segregation, social depredation, and other relevant issues to American descendants of slaves and African Americans, including the current political climate that does not address our issues.
This is the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to be with you all here this evening, as we are discussing exposing the system of injustice. I want you to be clear and understand exactly what you're up against here. Understand exactly what we're up against. This is about a concerted, deliberate effort to pacify and make docile the black body politic. This is about the institution and establishment of blatant white supremacist terrorism. Full stop. It is about normalizing state-sanctioned white supremacist violence against black people. Full stop. It is about you being a black law-abiding citizen and to proving that you have no rights. You don't have any rights. Please understand what that's for. This is to firmly establish that as a black person in America, you have no rights. You have no civil rights. You don't have the right to simply walk down the street and be left alone. No, you don't. And that every white person, every single white person is deputized to infringe on your rights. That's the whole point. That's the whole shooting match. Every white person, this is to establish that every white person is authorized to infringe on your rights. You see, under the old slave codes, that's what you have to remember, which is what this really gets at, is under the old slave codes. Under the old slave codes, any white person could walk up to you and demand to see your paperwork, demand to see your freedom papers, demand that you prove that you're not a slave. That's where the book 12 Years a Slave comes from. Any white person is authorized and deputized to deprive you of your constitutional and human rights. That's the whole point. But I want to go a little bit further here tonight. Since we're having this discussion, I want to go a little bit further here. You see, I was correcting some of the misguided individuals, and that's one of the issues we have right there, is that, folks, the internet age has emboldened people to say things that are just silly and wrong and no real knowledge of things. They just say stuff and they want to sound intelligent. And if you ever get charged with anything, boy, I hope this isn't your representation. I want to remind you all of something here. Let's go ahead here and step through the archives, if you will. Let's take a walk through the woods. Tariq, and shout out to Tariq, he has a thing that he's talked about the common law of white supremacy. And every once in a while, you'll have some attorney try to jump up and say that there is no common law. That's not the way that works. There is no common law. There is no establishment of it. Okay. let's go ahead and check on a few things here, because I want to go a little bit further than folks actually go into it. Actually, that statement is far more accurate than you all realize. Let me go let you know something here. You can go Google, by the way, you can Google everything that I'm saying right now. You can Google everything that I'm saying. When we talk about not case law, because there's the problem. The problem is you sitting up letting somebody tell you that verdicts and how the court system works is based on, quote, case law. When you have literally, in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, understand what the real weight is that comes behind the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. The weight that comes behind it is that both the state and federal government both got on the same page about ignoring the fact that he had an illegal gun to begin with. That was the state and the feds. Do not let some white supremacist, fork-tongued, devil snake quote attorney mislead you into thinking that we're talking about that the court is ruled by case law. When you have a situation where literally the state and the feds colluded together to say that the written law did not matter. That wasn't just one entity, that was the state and the feds both said the written law doesn't matter. Well, that's what we're under. Not case law, but the actual actions of the court system. And here's the point. The point is that action was reliable. You knew exactly what was going to happen. You knew what the state was going to do. You knew the feds were going to back them up. So we know that that is the law because that is what they did, and it was A, predictable, B, reliable. It wasn't a wild card. There is no Supreme Court or anybody else stepping in and say, hey, you can't do that. They both got together, and that is the law. They were shown what the law says, and they said, well, we say that that can be ignored. Therefore, that is the law. You can't claim that the law is something separate from what is predictable and reliable. That is the law. You sat up in front of several judges and they all codified it. What they said at the state level, the Fed said, yep, that's correct. Oh, well, that's the law. You know, we have securities laws that basically say what they're doing with cryptocurrency is illegal. Well, they're allowing them to do it. So guess what? It's legal now. It's legal now. The law is what they enforce. That is the law. The law is what they uphold and enforce, and it is reliable. If you walk to the SEC talking about what you're not supposed to be able to do with cryptocurrency, they're going to tell you get the hell out of here. That's the law. Now let's go further. When somebody tries to mislead you about case law, don't you be deceived about that either. Because you see, get out your Googles and try to prove me wrong. The United States Supreme Court has routinely relied on European law, European precedent. I'm talking about Old English, things such as the Castle Doctrine. The United States Supreme Court has relied on English customs. I didn't say English laws. I said English customs, English laws, not American, in order to substantiate their rulings in America. Well, that's the law. For those of you who did not know, yes, Louisiana still relies on French statutes, actually. So, yes, as a matter of fact, yeah. It's very, very true. So in case you all didn't know, the United States Supreme Court routinely has referred to English customs and English law to substantiate rulings and determinations, the rationales. Remember, when they give you their case law or whatever, when they give you their rulings from the Supreme Court or the appellate courts, they're supposed to write down and state how it is that they came to their conclusions and what substantiates their conclusions. When they start talking about customs and English law and derivatives and things like that, well, what they're telling you is, okay, welcome to the common law. Well, we have a written law here that already substantiates things. So if they're going to something else, well, that's the law. So when somebody tries this trick bag on you that, well, this is written over here, so it's not the law if it's not, no, these are common law. Now, let's go a little bit further because a lot of folks are misled about when they hear those terms. They're misled when they hear those terms because do you all understand when you talk about common law, in reality, what that really means is it is up to the judge's discretion.
What? Damn! What?
Do you understand that? That is what common law actually means. Common law is simply saying that this is up for the judge's discretion. If you want to claim common law marriage, that's not actually something that you can enforce. Did you realize that? Oh, follow me, follow me, follow me, follow me. Next time some jackass tries to sit up here and read you the Riot Act and whatnot and try to convince you of something, people, please understand, you cannot arbitrarily declare common law for yourself. Do you understand that? You can't say, I've been living with this woman for 20 years, therefore I say that she is my common law wife. If you cannot get the government to recognize that, if the government refuses to recognize your declaration, then it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist unless or until you can get the government to recognize it. That's the part that anybody trying to lecture you about common law leaves out. You see, you can't correct your status. All these clowns who sold you all on the fallacy and idiocy of status correction, the problem is you can't correct your status unless you can get the government to honor your so-called corrected status. Until you get a government entity to say, yes, we agree with your interpretation of your life. Yes, we validate this. If you can't do that, you don't have it. Which means you're going to have to get somebody, if they dispute it, you're going to have to get somebody to say, okay, well, we could say no, but we're going to say yes. You can't go up to a judge and say, I demand that you recognize my common law marriage. You are compelled to do so. Now, give me this money over here. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to walk up to them and say, I compel you to recognize my common law marriage or anything else. When you talk about property, people, adverse possession, you can't compel them to acknowledge that. You can do everything that the letter of the law says, which, by the way, these are carrying over old English customs, by the way. Once again, you want to talk about your old English customs, just look into adverse possession. Well, you can't impose that. You can't tell them, well, I did everything it says here, so you all have to recognize that. No. It's up to their discretion. You can literally do everything you were supposed to do, and then they say, yeah, we're not doing that. Yeah, we ain't doing that. Yeah. We know there's a common law for that. Yeah, we ain't doing that. So that's up to the judge's discretion whether or not they will recognize it. And if they don't recognize it, well, you ain't got it. Now, inversely, if they then suddenly determine that you do have it, no matter what the written law says, well, guess what? Now you have it. Kyle Rittenhouse broke the law up one side and down the other. The state and the federal court both determined that, he's got a right to carry his weapon, even if it's an illegal one. We determined that he's not bound to that. He's perfectly legal to carry that weapon. Well, that's the law right there. Yeah, the book says you're not supposed to. The book says he committed a crime. However, when the system says that that's okay, well, welcome to common law. This is the judge's discretion. This is up to the judge's discretion as established by local custom. Folks, y'all see how tricky the damn law is? Please remember, there's a reason why you have had the reclassification of pornography. And if you want to go down a real rabbit hole, try defining what pornography is. The Supreme Court has tied itself in knots attempting to define what is pornographic. I mean, how do you define pornographic? They've tried, they set some precedents, and they got knocked down each one because that's a very slippery thing. What is pornographic? What is art? What is biological? What's pornography? And they still struggle with this to this day. Now, they used to have it where they said local standards. What would be offensive to local standards? Okay, folks, have you realized how that bar has moved over the last 40 years to what is considered, quote, offensive? So now XXX porn is no longer considered to be, quote, offensive to local standards. What used to be horribly offensive no longer is. Oh, so that's common law too. Okay. Yes, whatever is at our discretion. Whatever is at our discretion, that's what we get to do there. It's up to the judge for that. It's up to the judge for that. Based on however we want to define it. Do you have constitutional rights? Oh boy, here we go. Oh boy, here we go. Oh, they're not going to like that. Do you have constitutional rights? Well, I mean, I guess that depends. Which right are we referring to? Which right are we talking about? Can it be arbitrary? It damn sure can. Don't let folks sit up here and tell you that common law is written. Common law is not. That is a lie. That is a lie. It is not written. Don't let anyone lie to you. They're going to tell you those things right there. And then when you walk in there, next thing you know, here's the problem. The problem would be if you had one judge saying it and everybody else spoke against him, he would be a rogue. He's not a rogue if everybody upholds him after the fact. Do you understand that? That judge with this illegal ruling, he's not a rogue if the rest of the system and all the others back him up. That's not a rogue anymore. That's not a fluke. That's the law. That's the law right there. 12 years a slave people. It's like, okay, we're free people now. Nah, no, you're not. Because the law is any white person is deputized to revoke your constitutional rights. And the rest of the system, every other facet of it, the courts, the police, the legislators, they are all going to sit back and allow it. That's the law. When it comes to marijuana, when Colorado basically decided to ignore federal law, that became the law right then. Folks, please understand, marijuana is still a Class A. Was it Schedule 1? And yet, Colorado just said, yeah, we're done with that. And guess what? Because they had uniformity, predictability, and reliability, they created their own common law in real time right in front of your faces. Did you get that? They created a common law right in front of you. If you go to the Cornell Law School website, it defines common law as common law is law developed through judicial decisions rather than enacted statutes. In the United States, early courts relied heavily on English common law until the American legal system matured and began to develop its own doctrines. Through precedent or by analogy to decided cases. Well, folks, it still does it to this day. That's not an old thing that happened and then stopped. They still do it to this day. The Supreme Court just nullified the Voting Rights Act based on race. They nullified the Voting Rights Act based on race, even though you know that you have a racial problem in the southern states that has never been corrected. The Supreme Court came in and said racism is legal. So when we discuss these things and when you talk about that, I want you to understand what you're actually referring to. So when your black child is at a game, minding their own business, does your child have the civil right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property if they're sitting there minding their own business? Does your child have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of property while they're just sitting under a tent at a track game? Do they have the right not to be harassed or to have their civil liberties infringed on by a group of thugs? Do they have that right? The state of Texas, now we know what the Constitution says. The state of Texas said, no, you don't. Why, Austin Metcalf and his brother and others, they have a right. By finding you guilty, they said they have a right to infringe on your civil liberties. Not they have leeway. Why, they have a right. When Daniel Penny cowardly sneaks up behind Jordan Neely and strangles him to death, never touched anybody, what are they telling you? You have a right to infringe on this black person's civil rights. Well, yeah, we know what the law says. Why, the law says that you don't have that right. However, under the common law of white supremacy, we recognize that that is on a case-by-case basis. You have a right, civil right, on a case-by-case basis. That's the law of white supremacy. And it only applies to you. You don't get to walk up and sneak up behind a white drug addict and strangle him to death. You don't get to do that. Nor do you get to have an all-black jury.
What? Damn!
You want to talk about the common law of white supremacy? The courts ruled a long damn time ago. You can't sit up here and remove all the black folk from a jury. You can't racially sanitize the jury. But under the common law of white supremacy, this judge will do it because they've conferred with all the rest of them in the system that this is the law. Well, what about the Constitution? Well, the common law of white supremacy says that there's an exception to the Constitution whenever we say there is. You know, like if you're common law married, well, you're supposed to be down at the courthouse to make sure you've documented these things so that there's no ambiguity about whether or not you intended for the children you had with this woman to be your legitimate heirs. That's the whole point of having state marriage. The point of having state marriage is that you are declaring to the society that these children by this woman are your legitimate heirs. Everybody else, them the little side babies you had with somebody else, those are not my legitimate heirs. The ones I had with this woman that I signed with the state, if something happens to me, I expect the state to step in and enforce this union with this woman and the heirs thereof. That's the reason for state marriage. If anything happens to me, the state recognizes this woman and these children as my heirs, even if I'm not here, because I declared to the state that this woman and these children are my heirs. Anybody else, get in where you fit in. But these are my legitimate heirs here. Common law is if a judge jumps in and says, well, you know, you were with this chick long enough that I don't think she should have to be burdened with the trivialities of going to the courthouse and declaring this, because in my estimation, you and her were living as husband and wife. So therefore, I am going to alleviate her of the burden of having to have it documented through the state. She's come to me and made her case. So even though she doesn't have any paperwork and never did, and you never codified any, I've decided she has that right. Even though the law says Kyle Rittenhouse has an illegal weapon, we are going to decide that he has that right. Even though Daniel Penny snuck up behind an unarmed man in a state where it was illegal to do so, we've decided he has that right. That's what it is. So when people try to put you in a trick bag about that and get you to feel differently and talk you in circles and recognize exactly what you're dealing with here, this is them saying we make this up as we go along. So when we tell you that the law is whatever they say it is on the day they say it is, that's what we mean. It's whatever they say it is on the day they say it is. Now, there is one chink in the armor. Whether or not they can get you to go along with that. Now, that's where you enter the common law of black empowerment.
And deal with it.
Now, that's when you stumble upon the common law of black empowerment. Yes, they make up the rules as they go along. Yeah, we heard that. However, the real thing is whether or not you can get us to accept rules of injustice. There's where the problem comes in, is whether or not you can get us to bow and accept the common law of white supremacy. That's where it becomes an issue. It becomes an issue there because remember, the law isn't just what you enforce. The law is also what the people accept. The law is not just whatever the governmental powers attempt to enforce. It is also what the people accept. And you are not obligated to accept abuse, injustice, assault, murder. You are not rape. You're not obligated to accept that under any circumstances, under any threat. You are not obligated to accept that. What they want to do is condition you into thinking that you're supposed to. But you're not obligated to accept injustice. The other thing is what they are next going to tell you is that if you do not accept injustice, there will be consequences. Please understand, my people, that freedom is never free, especially in the system of white supremacy. We have had martyrs, we have had political prisoners, we will continue to do so long as the system of white supremacy exists. Don't deceive yourself about where you are and what you're dealing with. As long as you're in this system, that will continue and persist. What they want to see is whether or not we are going to outlast that. You are never to teach your children that we have to accept it. Because that's the ultimate goal, is to find out how fragile you are and how much you're willing to accept. And then they're going to keep maximizing it. But you are under no obligation to accept injustice. You are under no obligation to accept tyranny. You're under no obligation to accept white supremacist violence. You're under no obligation to accept new Jim Crow and chattel slavery. You're under no obligation to accept that. They are going to try to beat you down and badger you and get you to think that, well, you have to accept a little injustice. The problem is there's no such thing as accepting a little of it. You either accept the whole pig or none of it. You don't just get a pig foot and then you go. You never saw them just sell you a pig foot. Okay, you buy this pig foot, you come home with a great big ass hog sitting in the living room. That's the way that goes. It is up to you and me and us and we to make it clear what we accept and what we don't. So I walked you through all of this because I want you to see that they're not blind to any of this. Everything I said tonight, they already know. They already know everything I said. What they really want to see is whether or not we as a group accept everything they said. Now, that's the part they're really looking for. They're looking to see whether or not we as a group accept it. Whether or not we'll go along with it. Will you acquiesce? Will you surrender? Will you be all right with that? Or do you still have the heart that says that we understand that every freedom movement, you all have martyred people the whole time, and that we understand that? That's the part right there they're looking for is, do you recognize a law that is higher than white supremacy? That's what they're searching for. And when they see that you do, folks will start thinking twice about whether or not white supremacy is still a viable common law to perpetuate. Let's go ahead and jump over here on Zoom right quick. We got James here on Zoom. James, unmute yourself. Lower left-hand corner.
I got it, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for the broadcast. Thank you for having me up. You're making some great points, and it's as though they don't even care about their own people, because if they did, they would use these instances as lessons of how not to be, instead of continuing this "you right no matter what" and jeopardizing the lives of not only black people, but also white people who think it's going to be okay for them, because it's just not going to happen like that all the time. They are not teaching their children to keep their hands to themselves. Mind your own business. Leave people alone. I mean, the video evidence is out. Prior to that, yeah, they could do all the chitter chatter and all the denials. Okay, it's over now. Particularly for those who saw the clear version of that incident. I know there are several, but there are versions that actually highlight the Metcalfs coming into the stadium while the camera is panning to every single move. When they stop, the camera stops. So it was as if this incident was premeditated by them.
Brother, you got to understand something. White supremacy is a religion that is founded on sacrifices. They come in the door with the recognition that there will have to be folks sacrificed. Elon Musk told you, white supremacist, he wants to go to Mars, and that they're going to have to sacrifice a bunch of folk to colonize it. When the Europeans came across the Atlantic, going to be a bunch of folks sacrificed, and there were. That's not some unforeseen outcome. That is something they take into account from the beginning, and still do to this day.
So do you think that personally there are some that will learn valuable lessons that won't be so naive to think that this didn't happen the way that their naked eyes seen it happen? Just remain oblivious to the truth.
Well, I think that people respond to trends and patterns. I don't think they respond to incidents so much as they respond to trends and patterns. So that's my response to your statement. And an incident, if something happens once, that's an incident. If something happens twice, that's a trend. If something happens 3 times, that's a pattern. So my response to your question is, people, cultures, societies tend to respond to incidents, differently than they respond to trends and patterns. I'll just leave that there. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. I'll just leave that there for you. So how people respond to trends and patterns is different than how they respond to an incident. Let's go ahead and jump back over here on Zoom again. Let me see if I can get Superpower Media up here on Zoom for me here. All right, Superpower, what's on your mind?
Yeah, Jason, man, the race war is in full effect. And you spoke about this years ago. You know, you made the documentary, and we are living in it right now. I mean, we seeing law enforcement kill babies, man. Just recent, we seeing they on the move, man. And so, as Black Americans, man, we're gonna have to really keep our eyes open and tool ourselves up to say, hey, okay, yeah, I might have to do some jail time, don't let that be that's what they wanted you to fear, that, oh, well, if I protect myself, then I'm going to go to prison. You might have to go to prison. You might have to go talk to God for a while. But hey, always defend yourself. And what pisses me off, Jason, about what happened in Georgia, about that clown that came and tried to kill that whole family, is that they let this guy out of jail. So as a family, if I'm one of them family members, I'm thinking, okay, this dude stay right up the street. Really? Somebody shoot my house up, it ain't gonna be no peace. It's not gonna be no I'm sitting back waiting to see what else gonna happen. you just let this dude just try to kill the babies. It was babies out there. It was little girls, old women, and you gonna let this guy out of jail on bond? Doesn't make any sense. So it's that I'm white and I say so law. That's the law that you was taught that everybody don't understand. It's a white and I say so law that they want us to respect. That I don't respect it. Never will.
Remember, colonization starts between your ears. If they can conquer your mind, if they can conquer your psyche, if they can conquer you emotionally, if they can get you emotionally afraid, they don't have to worry about you physically. There's nothing to fear physically if you've already been defeated emotionally and psychologically. That's what the battlefield is. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight, brother. We appreciate that. Let me see if I can get Joe Blow up here on Zoom for me. Let me see if we can get Joe Blow up here on Zoom for me here. Okay, Joe Blow, unmute yourself. Lower left-hand corner, microphone. Lower left-hand corner, microphone. Yeah. There you go.
I'm on there with you. It just means that, we just have to be more serious about things. And we don't have a right to self-defense. So, hey, when you do have to do it to the utmost. Because you're gonna get treated like you did it to the utmost, so you might as well go there.
Well, self-defense isn't a right that you get from the state. That's a right you get from God.
No doubt indeed. I mean, that's straight biblical. But what I got to say is, if I'm going down here on earth, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. I'm not doing it like that. And I don't expect none of my people to do it like that. And once they realize that we're serious, there won't be no more chuds walking around. There'll be none of that. He didn't even make it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, everything's more serious now. Like you said, this is good.
The only progress we have made or ever will make will be under resistance. You're not going to make any progress on the acquiescence. And you're going to have to show folk that you are not afraid to sacrifice. And I know that's a difficult thing. That's the reason they call it sacrifice. They don't call it sacrifice because it's easy. They call it sacrifice because it's hard. Nobody ever sacrificed something that was easier that they wanted to give up. That's not a sacrifice. That's a throwaway. That's a gift. Sacrifice is when you have to give up something you dearly want. That's sacrifice.
Hey, I came from an all chocolate city. That I moved over here to Pennsylvania, and you know about Pennsylvania, like you say, it's black on one side, black on the other, and Alabama in the middle. So I came from an all chocolate city, and my mother told me, and I had a lot of fight with me, and my mother told me, if they play that racial game, don't even play with them. Immediately handle that. And I did that in that little white town that I was in, and the respect came real quick.
Yeah, I mean, everything is about testing us to see if they can continue the practice. And it doesn't take millions to do it. It takes one or two to show them. It's like, okay, that changes everything. However, you have to be, that has to be something, as I said, that's not an incident. When they start seeing trends and patterns, you start seeing wholesale changes. When they start seeing trends and patterns move toward cooning, they start testing you more. They start seeing that. Remember, that goes both ways. So if it's an incident of cooning, that's one thing. Once they see trends and patterns, oh, hell, maybe we can start practicing white supremacy again.
But one thing about it, coons ain't safe. Coons ain't safe and they ain't going to be.
I mean, if you all think about that for a few moments, Trayvon Martin, Jordan Russell Davis, These are folks who are in upper middle class neighborhoods, man. They weren't in the hood. They were in upper middle class neighborhoods, and look how they got targeted. So keep that in mind. They don't come down to the hood or whatever where you got numbers and try to practice white supremacy. No, when you start moving to places, if they think they got you by yourself, okay, here comes a pattern. When they start seeing trends and patterns, they start moving on it.
True that. But what I gotta say is, everybody likes to listen to gangster rap and how and how hard rap is. Be that, not to your own people, to everybody else that tries y'all. I land my plane.
Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. I do this for you all as a reminder. I do this for you as a reminder that it's not accidental. What you saw in the Carmelo Anthony verdict there, that's the system. This other stuff we had, that's the exception. Convicting Amber Geiger and the others, that's the exception. The rule is what you just saw. That right there is the rule. What we've been doing, what we've been accomplishing is justice. Justice is the exception. White supremacy is the rule. Injustice is the rule. Kangaroo court and back alley lynchings, that's the rule. And when you realize that, then you're going to start making adjustments to understand you're already behind enemy lines. You're already behind enemy lines, man. I'm not here to tell you everything's great and wonderful. We wouldn't have to be here if it were. You're behind enemy lines. So when you're behind enemy lines, by definition, there are going to be sacrifices. There are going to be difficulties. That's what it means to be in a war zone, and specifically to be behind enemy lines. The real issue is whether or not we as a people understand that and accept that, and then move and teach our children and speak accordingly. Hey, we're behind enemy lines over here. You are not in a subtle, non-hostile, hospitable place. You are behind enemy lines. We're coming up on Father's Day here tomorrow, and I'm probably going to have a bit of a special message where that's concerned. Going to probably have a bit of a special message where that's concerned, because this year in particular, I think that's something that I want us to focus on. When black masculinity and black manhood has been under a constant, relentless 24/7 assault for a century, I think it'll be a good opportunity to speak about that as well. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here tonight. If you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the haven of intelligent black thought. We do this every weekend, holidays, some days in between. So click that subscribe button and notification button. Join us each and every time that we're here. If you haven't been to blackchannelfilms.com, check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work at blackchannelfilms.com. I want to thank all of you for tuning in to tonight's program. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. And this concludes this broadcast of the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is justice.